everybody, I'm back and I was at the part of the story of the ghosts and the haunting of the Perrin family where the children all got together and told their mother about what they've experienced finally. And like I told you, Carolyn, the mother had had a rather graphic experience of her own. So after all this, she decides, well, um, I'm kind of scared of being here. We don't need to be dealing with all this stuff. It's not good for the kids. I need to tell my husband. But she knew that her husband was very skeptical about this type of stuff. He didn't believe in ghosts. He didn't believe in the paranormal. But she felt like she needed to sit down and talk to him about what was been going on. So she did. She tried to talk to him about the things that were happening, and before she could even hardly get anything out, he shuts her down. He says, this is ridiculous. It's crazy for you to believe this type of stuff. It's not happening. It's your imagination. And she just decides from then on, she's going to keep it to herself and help the children as much as she can and just figure out another way to deal with it. So that's when I believe she went and tried to figure out the past history on this house. And of course, back then in the 70s, we didn't have like big computers. We didn't have the internet. They didn't have all sorts of things where you can just go online, figure out, put the area of your house in and get the information from the internet. That won't happen. So she had to find her information elsewhere. Well, she kind of feels alone in all of this. Her husband isn't helping her. He doesn't believe her. And he's probably making her feel like a dumb woman. So she just she kind of just takes off on her own and tries to figure out some information to help her. As I said before, they are not religious. They're not a religious family. And they really just did not know what to do. Okay, so after learning about some of the deaths, the people that lived in this house, the generations that lived and died there at this house, she becomes a little more aware of what's going on and who these spirits are. Well, one particular spirit she finds out is a woman by the name of Bathsheba. She was born in Rhode Island in 1812 and married Judson Sherman in 1844. So she was about 30 some years old, and this woman is described in a very creepy sort of way. It's said that she was known to have been, like I said, a recluse in her home. It said she was a very vile, hideous woman. She was described as having a face similar to a desiccated beehive covered in cobwebs with no real human features. They say that her head was round and gray, and it set off to one side of her neck as if her neck had been broken. It said whenever she was in a room or stayed any amount of time in one room, she would leave, and a smell from her, it said it permeated the room, that she had a very vile smell about her. She had a baby, and this is very horrific to me. It said that, it said that Bathsheba took a large, sharp sewing needle and impaled her baby in the head with the sewing needle and killed the baby. It said that when she was on trial for this situation, that there was a huge lack of evidence, so they had to drop the case. Also, she had three more children, and none of them lived past the age of 4. Okay. She was very cruel to her staff, the people that worked for her and basically took care of her in her home. She would lock them in a room like a basement or an attic and beat them and starve them and just treat them very, very poorly. It said that she had chosen particular ones of the daughters in the Perrin family that she would haunt more so than the others. It said that she would pull chairs out from under the family. She would that she was the one who was yanking the hair of the daughters. She would yank the covers off of them. She would pull their legs, just torment them in the middle of the night, which would cause the kids to go run to their older sister's bedroom, wanting to stay in there, scared to death to be alone. Let me see. Yes. Oh, another thing that it said that they thought she was lusting after Roger Perrin. That he would always feel a sense that she was there, she was around. Felt that she would caress his neck, rub her hands up his back. Was just like very lustful after this man. But on the contrary to that, she completely hated Carolyn Perrin, the mother. It was claimed that she would take things and beat over Carolyn's head to scare her, to wake her up constantly in the middle of the night. She would slap her, beat her, and one day Carolyn was laying on the couch in her living room, and she felt something kind of like stab the calf of her leg, and when she looked at it, she said it was bleeding like profusely, and it looked as though she had been stabbed in the leg by a large sewing needle. Okay, and then it said that after she died, she did what she did to her baby, and then after she died, she must have carried her large sewing needle into the beyond with her. It said So Mrs. Perrin said that she awoke in the morning before dawn to find an apparition by her bed. At the head of her bed, she saw sort of the head of an old woman with its head hanging off to one side, wearing an old gray dress. And she heard a voice say something like, get out, I'll drive you out by death and gloom. It said in the beginning of Bathsheba's torment, it was just a little bit cruel, but that she would pinch her, slap her, throw objects at her, scream at her, try to force her out of the house. But she had this big attachment to Roger Perrin, but that she was trying to drive Carolyn out of the home. By this time, the husband is also experiencing this type of stuff, and finally him and Carolyn get together and they contact Ed and Lorraine Warren. Let me see. They said they couldn't. The parents couldn't just get up and leave and just walk away from this house. They had everything financially tied up into this house. That the first moment they got there, they experienced this stuff, and they were tormented the whole time. And Ed and Lorraine would try to help. Also, they tried, when you do a possession, when someone is possessed, you have to get permission from the Vatican to be the high priest. He has to give permission to be able to conduct a possession, and a possession, a possessed person's, what is the word I'm looking for? An exorcism. That they were there to try to help out with an exorcism, because finally near the end, before they ended up moving from the home, Carolyn Perrin had become possessed, and they say that she had become possessed by Bathsheba Sherman. And the daughter Carolyn takes and makes a statement. The night that I saw my mother die was the most terrifying night of all. She spoke in a voice we had never heard before, and a power not of this world threw her 20 feet into another room. Now, if you remember in the end of The Conjuring, of the movie The Conjuring, at the end, and for those of you who haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry, but Carolyn Perrin was possessed. And finally, with the help of the Warrens, they were able to release the demon, the spirit, out of her. But in the true story, it did not end like the movie. Carolyn Perrin, it said that she died. But then a little bit later, it says that The Warrens said that they had the best of intentions. They were there to help, to only do good, to help the parents because they knew that they were in such like dire need of their help, but that things had become so much worse when they were around that it seemed that it got so bad that Roger Perrin ordered them out to leave the house immediately. It was really bad. The parents found out that anyone that had lived in that house prior to them did experience all this paranormal stuff, except for the local minister I told you about. He didn't experience any of it or claimed that he didn't experience it. The owner of the house, after the parents, well, excuse me, years before the parents even moved in there, the owners were trying to renovate this house and hired a construction worker to renovate it. It said when he was there trying to doing some work, renovating the home, he stopped his work immediately, and it said he ran from the home, never to return. He ran screaming, left his tools, left his car, left everything. He was so scared to death. Um, and it just happened one day that the parents had found the house on the market and put everything in it and moved in. Um, because of financial strain, they just couldn't move out until 1980. And Ed Warren later died in 2006, but Lorraine still works in the paranormal investigations. She runs the private occult museum in the back of her house in Connecticut with her son-in-law. And Andrea Perron wrote a book about their experiences called House of Darkness, House of Light. Okay, I hope y'all got something out of this. I hope you enjoyed hearing the types of things that happen, and I hope that you can all check out this movie. It's really good, and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed telling you about some of this stuff. You can look this stuff up. You can put in House of Darkness, House of Light, and read a little bit about this story. It is a true story, and I do believe that such things did take place. If you enjoy this, if you want to hear about some other movies or stories of the paranormal or true stories that took place in the past, in history, leave me a comment. Tell me if you liked it or not, and let me know what you might want to hear about. Okay? Well, I enjoyed telling you about it, and I will probably see you on Monday. Bye.